So here is our review on food for the month of March and the latest research along those lines. We have a lot of interesting studies to look at, starting with this systematic review that says that people who eat vegetarian and vegan diets have impaired wound healing compared to omnivores. Now, there's a lot of problems with this systematic review in that they haven't chosen studies properly, there aren't a good representation in general, and that they also haven't really considered what these diets are, because many times what's taken as a vegan or vegetarian diet may actually just be high carbohydrates without actually all the micronutrients. So we're starting with an essential deficient population and comparing wound healing for essential factors that are known to already be better in a whole food plant-based diet otherwise. So we do know that if you just go straight vegan, you will need to have supplementation in your diet, especially for B12, iron, calcium, vitamin D, iodine, zinc, and omega-3 fatty acids. And that's a known thing. I mean, even modern diets will have these deficiencies. It's not easy to get all these things in one go. Does that really lead to a decreased healing? I believe this author has a little bit of a bias or an agenda when they release a systematic review to that effect. On the other hand, we have other studies looking at vegan and vegetarian diets versus a conventional diet, and they look at inflammatory markers. Now, those who are on a vegan vegetarian diet have lower inflammatory markers like decreased CRP, decreased MDA, decreased ADHDG. And that's in comparison to the healthy standard, the Mediterranean diet, which is essentially omnivorous. Is it really a surprise? Not really. I mean, we're cutting off all things that are producing inflammation in the body. A lot of high carbohydrate diets, a lot of foods that include animal sources will be pro-inflammatory. So it's no surprise they'll be less inflamed. The question is, how does that translate into real life? And here's a study we have that looks at plant-based versus omnivorous diets and mood. So they find that those who have a plant-based diet have less mood issues, less anxiety, depression, etc., because they have less inflammation in their body overall from this healthier diet. The next question then comes down to juicing. You're still getting your whole food, or you're still getting your plant-based but not whole food from this juice. So is it really okay if you make the juice from a plant or a vegetable? Now, this study had kind of a short follow-up time frame. So what they found is that there was an increase in pro-inflammatory bacteria in the microbiome, and those can increase gut permeability, leading to leaky gut, making more problems, more inflammation, and even cognitive impairments in the long run. But they don't have actual change in the microbiome in relation to this, except for the fact that there's more pro-inflammatory bacteria than if a person is doing a whole food plant-based diet. So, from there, what happens when you have an omnivorous diet? And this is looking at processed foods versus a whole food plant-based diet. Now we find that people who are in a plant-forward diet, where they're trying to make that shift towards healthy, they might look for plant-based alternatives or even processed foods that are supposed to be vegan. They're not whole food plant-based, meaning you're missing out on all the natural fibers and other nutrients that would be in there. So it's no surprise that this study found that college students who are now plant-forward or trying to make the healthy shift end up having deficiency of fiber, end up having deficiency of micronutrients, and may have less fatty acids in circulation, but in general it can be a problem for them. So from there, what are the impacts of diet in people who've already had a cancer? Now here's a specific study looking at a balanced, nutritious diet that looks at outcomes in ovarian cancer, and they find that those who have a balanced, nutritious diet, rather than this ultra-processed modern diet, or the MNC diet, these people actually live longer and have better quality of life if they have ovarian cancer on a whole food plant-based diet or in a balanced, nutritious diet versus a processed diet. And this becomes generalizable again when you look at studies from food priority areas. So there are food deserts. Food deserts not being dessert like the sweets, but desert where you don't have food. And that can be in these concrete jungles or cities or housing projects or ghettos where a person doesn't get actual whole food. What they get is food products, meaning something made somewhere else, given preservatives, and then allowed to sit on a shelf until they're bought. So people who are in food priority areas that have a cancer will overall have much worse cancers, and they'll have recurrence, and they'll have overall worse quality of life compared to those that are not in a food priority area. Meaning people who get whole food don't suffer as bad as those who get food products. Another question people ask is, when should you start this vegetarian vegan business on people? The concern is that if you don't, children won't grow properly. So this study goes on to show that vegan and vegetarians that have fortified their diets can have a normal growth pattern as children. The next thing is the effect of ultra-processed foods in low-middle income countries. And we find that more and more of these multinational corporations, to push their identity, link themselves to various movie stars who might actually eat healthy, but they market a product that is unhealthy. And that comes into countries that are low middle income, where they see their hero having a snack that's actually trash. How does that affect children? We're seeing that this leads to obesity and leads to more lifelong problems: early onset diabetes, hormonal changes, obesity, sedentary life, caries, etc. when these kind of products are brought into the market rather than the traditional foods that a person could grow up with if they're eating healthy. Digressing a little bit, we have an AI study that looks at whether AI can predict what kind of diet a person will be on based on the way they answer surveys. So this is nothing really special. What they find is that if a person responds yes to eating fish, they're probably going to be on a Mediterranean diet versus a vegan or vegetarian diet. That is literally a no-brainer. But they do find various indicators that can predict that if a person is older, they might be on a Mediterranean diet. If they're younger, they might be more vegetarian, vegan. And these are indicators that could help you pre-screen a person to see what kind of problems they could be suffering from. In the large language models that put things together, this is still useful information, even though it's really just common sense. The last one we're going to wrap up with is a controversial study again. It's from Quebec, and it says that people who eat healthy have to spend more money. Now, this is a hot topic when you come to nutrition and well-being. This is a study saying that Eat Lancet or Eat the Rainbow diet is more expensive than just conventional food. And what they're comparing to is they're saying a whole food plant-based diet is more expensive than eating eggs and having dairy. Now, what does that really mean? This is a hidden agenda that may not be known to a lot of people, but when you look at Quebec, the government subsidizes production of food for its citizens. The thing is, a whole food plant-based diet is very dependent on climate, temperature, and sustainable resources that may or may not come back, versus poultry, which is relatively stabilized. So if you subsidize a stabilized product on a market, you can definitely stabilize and bring it down even more, and then you can have it become cheaper than things that are a bit more fickle. So it's no surprise they found that eating healthy is more expensive, but you have to consider, why is that the case? And if we grow things on our own, there's actually a way to eat healthy without having to spend that much money, but people don't actually consider that.